Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Wellman, editor of SBC Americas, and I am so relieved to be talking to the CEO of OneComply, Cameron Conn, today because I've been getting so many questions about compliance and regulation, and I feel like you are the person who has the answers.
Thank you, Jessica. Excited to be here as well. Thank you to SBC for putting on this conversation. OneComply, traditionally when we look at what the licensing process is, specifically in the North American market, it is very repetitive. It is very redundant. It is a lot of exposure to data. And then traditionally that data is kind of tossed aside until we need to get licensed again. What OneComply does is we centralize that information. We allow our clients to take over 200,000 data points about their key individuals, their occupational users, or their businesses, and we centralize it. And we allow them to make decisions about the scale, about renewals of their business, and create applications in seconds instead of hours and weeks and months. But it's also about the centralization of documents. When we look at what the licensing process entails, how many companies have data in a Dropbox here, and then they share some things through email, and then they have this on a personal file. It's that ability to centralize and protect that information and making it available, and then using that data to inform our clients of whether it's an expiry coming up, it's a material change, it's a compliance task, providing accountability on using the data points that are traditionally just tossed away, both by the regulator and the licensee once they're done with that process.
Well, I think you've touched on something I know I heard a lot about at SBC when it came to or at G2E rather, when it came to regulation and compliance, which was scalability. But you were at G2E as well. Were there common kind of themes and conversations you were having over the week?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's conversations that we've probably been having for the last couple of years, especially with the repeal of PASPA, is scalability and how do we get to market? How do we manage this process? And so it's really all of our clients of saying, how do we get into market quicker? We looked at a state like Ohio, they gave you a month. And I think there was a lot of companies that said, oh my God, a month, how are we going to do this in a month? Because of our product, I think we had 12 clients apply to Ohio and they did it in the first week because that data was readily available. And so removing a lot of that stress, I think what was also interesting from G2E is how many regulators came by and spoke to us. Traditionally, we've always known that OneComply as a byproduct has a lot of value to regulators. When I talked about the centralization of all of this data and these documents, we now have 9 regulatory boards that are actually coming into OneComply to access information. So traditionally, we have one state that's accept initial submissions. So they've signed their documents, they have fingerprint cards, they've centralized everything in OneComply and allowed those regulators to access those documents on initial submission. We have another 8 jurisdictions that are accessing through OneComply all of those follow-up documents that happen, post that submission. So we knew there was a byproduct to regulators, but now we're seeing that the regulators want better solutions. And traditionally, they've gone to market. We've seen some regulators, digitize the process, but they're grabbing something off the shelf that isn't about gaming. And that's what makes gaming so amazing is it's so difficult and it involves so many things. And to see that regulators are reaching out to us of saying, we need solutions. It's not just about the applicant facing, it's the regulator facing as well. It's always been on our roadmap, but now this is certainly accelerating that roadmap.
So was it kind of intentional from the beginning with regulators that they would eventually be, I think it's very obvious that OneComply can help a business succeed, and that's kind of the main intent of it. But has assisting regulators been something you kind of knew from the inception was going to happen as the company grew?
I mean, as full transparency, and obviously we're a compliance company, so transparency is important. Having a business model that banks on we're going to get the regulators to adopt this is not always the best way to go to market. We wanted to build up a reputation of providing really great service, showing efficiency, showing data protection, and knowing that if we did a good job, the proof would be in the pudding. And I think we've seen that by these regulators adopting OneComply to be able to access information. We knew that there's an opportunity. We know that there was always going to be an opportunity that if you centralize data, you would have the ability for regulators to all be pulling off of the symbiotic database. And knowing that there was a tremendous amount of risk in the market of knowing that the state of Colorado may have slightly different data than the state of Ohio. And now we're bifurcating this data. We're separating it out. And so we knew that if we did a very good job with our clients, it was going to give us the ability to say, well, now let's just put a mirror on the other side of it and allow that data access from the regulatory body, allow that communications, just like our teams use OneComply to communicate internally on compliance tasks. Why shouldn't that same sense of communication happen between a regulator? Whether it's a material change or a shipping notification or even an upcoming audit, centralize that. Have it in one secure system so we don't have information in email, we have information in the system. Really, that entire connective tissue between applicant and regulator and license holder should all be contained within one system. And that's what we'll be going to market with in Q2 of next year.
You mentioned Ohio earlier and kind of a short window, but I know that they were using kind of different approaches to getting through all this regulatory paperwork. They were doing compartmentalized pieces of data versus having to resubmit the whole thing. Have you seen more regulators kind of be open to ways of licensing that aren't submit this 300-page document, scan it as a PDF? Are there solutions that you're seeing regulators becoming more open to?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are more open. I mean, especially because the market is scaling, the workload coming out of COVID, people working from home, stacks of paper just don't work and it's really not secure. So we are seeing the adoption of products. I heard one of our clients was raving about what Ohio did was the submission of their minimum control standards and actually doing it digitally. And I think what we've seen is that's a theme within regulators is they have this portion is digital, but the rest isn't. And that's because, once again, nothing's been designed, specifically for gaming. So you can go to a state like Virginia, which has their own online portal, and it does some applications, doesn't do every application. And Nevada does occupational licenses, but it doesn't do business licenses. So there are all these partial systems. And I think that's the opportunity of saying you should use one system. And it shouldn't just be for licensing, because all of the data submitted on licensing is all the connected data tissue that is for operational compliance. And so I think that's where the opportunity is. And I think there is an appetite now for the industry of saying, well, let's just go all in and let's have something that's designed by the industry for the industry.
Having covered the regulations of different states and how they've gone online, it kind of feels like some of them almost just throw something in different to be different from another state. Is the idea of like a fully centralized system, is there hope that maybe that's going to happen?
I think as each company is different and each company has their own kind of North Star of what they focus on, regulators are no different. And I think you've seen states like Indiana. Indiana was the first state to say, we want a list of every crypto account and every sports betting account that you have for key individuals. That was something that was really unique. We were always providing banking information, but to specifically call that out. And I think every time I hear a regulator talking about going to market and a new market, they say, we want to be the toughest. It's already pretty tough. But I think they want to be the best and they should want to be the best and they should want to protect their state. But I think you can have 99% of the request of information be the same. But I shouldn't have to answer that 99% every time. Allow that opportunity to have a 1%. This is what's different for Indiana. And this is what's different for Michigan. We're providing it in very bite-sized requests of information. And so I think we can see that centralized request of information with that ability to say, these are important to this specific state. And we see that. We already see that with a lot of states. They've all adopted the MJPHD, that's multi-jurisdictional, and then they add their supplemental. Hey, thanks for doing this massive amount of work. Here's the 10 questions that are important to us that are outside of that. So I think there is that ability, and that's really what we're working towards.
We've talked a lot about regulators. Let's talk a bit about businesses, at G2E, other places. What have been the primary concerns with businesses as we're getting into our, 33rd and 34th regulatory body that they have to keep track of?
Yeah, I think, we've seen failings that have already happened where people have failed to get renewals. And I think on the surface, we kind of look at it going, oh my God, they didn't renew. How could you not renew? But that's really just the surface headline. I think below that is really about material change. It's about tracking that change in your business. We have more startups than we've ever had in gaming, and a lot of them are new to gaming, and they don't understand that once you get that license, you're on the clock. You're on the clock for the changes that happen naturally within your business, certainly with a company that's scaling. Did you raise money? Did your cap table change? Did you hire more people? And I think there was a lot of people that came into the market that said, we got a license. We crossed the finish line. No, that's the starting line. You now are carrying that license, like luggage with you. And so I think that's been a big thing of just saying, well, now we're licensed. We realize that we now have this onus of monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, annual filings, all of these things that now happen. And so I think that's a big realization, is just staying on top of it. And renewals come up quicker than you think. And so it's about taking this data and engaging with it and making it living and breathing. And that's what we do at OneComply. If you go in and you update your cap table, that's material change. And based on these 9 licenses you now have a compliance ticket that you need to complete to make sure you stay on side. So I think that's the big thing. We still have speed to market. We still have more companies that are starting up that need to go get licensed in 12 jurisdictions in 1 year. But it's about how do we make this operational? How do we make this sustainable for our business?
It's amazing how far we've come and that you can offer a product like this, because I've had conversations even recently where companies have said, well, we just, used an enterprise platform not designed for gaming like Jira to keep track of things. You've got the buy-in from the industry, you think, or is there still some resistance that maybe this isn't going to satisfy what regulators want?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do have buy-in from the industry for sure, which is great. I think there's still not the full picture. I think we've always looked at compliance in the gaming industry as being bifurcated, as having silos. And so you look at AML. AML sits in one bucket, and then you have legal, and then you have finance, and then you have HR, and then you have dedicated licensing teams. They really should all be one from an optical standpoint, because they have all the same impact to your license. And so I think that's what is a little bit different is getting the industry to realize that every single one of your employees has impact on compliance, which means you should have visibility on every single employee in regards to their impact to your licensing. So I think it's kind of painting that bigger picture where someone may look at us as a licensing tool. No, we're not licensing. We are ongoing compliance and being able to tell that story, because we've always just thrown FTEs at this. Oh my God, we have all these reporting requirements. Let's hire someone who just looks at this and puts this data in a spreadsheet. And I think we can't continue to throw FTEs at it. There's too much intellectual property that's at risk, because anytime there's turnover, are the skeletons going with that person that just left, where they know where the files are and what they need to do every single month? We need a little bit of risk mitigation. And by centralizing that, providing that accountability in one system allows you to be protected even if someone leaves your organization.
I think, too, with this, you have to be so mindful of what comes from being non-compliant, specifically fines. I think everybody's, especially in markets like Ontario, where you're seeing a lot of fines that maybe you aren't seeing as commonly in the US, but all these jurisdictions are leveraging fines on people for non-compliance. What do companies need to do to make sure that they don't get fined? Besides just be compliant, just be compliant. It's fine.
Yeah, if I had one sentence for that, certainly it would be a lot easier and wouldn't showcase what gaming is. My big thing when it comes to fines, I think about the executive team that gets the letter from the regulator and how many times that person reads that letter and goes, I didn't know that we had this problem. And I think that's the problem. The problem is that there's not optics. There's not this filtering of information that allows executive teams, director teams, management teams to know what is coming down the line or know where there is potential risk. We talk about Ontario. Those were marketing standards. That is, you put out an ad that you shouldn't have put out. So I think there has to be a sense of championship from an executive level that is constantly beating down that tree of saying, hey, compliance. But it's utilizing systems of saying, I want optics on these things. I want people going into a system and that signing accountability, it shouldn't live on a spreadsheet. I was a part of compliance and audit organizations where I'd be part of a casino property. We would sit down every single month and say, what's going on in compliance? And it would be on a piece of paper and that someone built in Word, and we would scribble down notes and we would all leave. And there was no optics to really what was discussed, who was provided accountability. Those things are now built into OneComply, where our clients are opening up OneComply and saying, show me everything that's outstanding. Show me everything that's coming up in the next 6 months and who's assigned to it. And knowing that you're going to get this email every single week that says, hey, this is what's going on. That's on the things that we know. I think you have to understand your regs. You have to understand what's being required. And it's not cookie cutter. You can't say, well, this is what we've always done in New Jersey, and let's just go take it to the next state, because those regs are going to be different. Like we said, these regulators want to be unique snowflakes, and you have to be prepared for that. It's not cookie cutter state to state.
You talked a bit, you handle the licensing, and that's kind of step one. It's great to have solutions like OneComply for making sure your key people are vetted. But for people considering you as a solution, what else is there beyond just making sure that you get your core licensing in place, and what benefits can OneComply offer them?
Okay, so I'll kind of
give me the sales pitch now.
Yeah, give me the sales pitch. Well, how about this? I'll ask you a question. When does your passport expire?
I just got it this year, so 2032.
Well, thanks for ruining my example, Jessica.
I wouldn't know if it weren't for the fact that I had specifically had to renew it.
Think about
to your point, it expired before I renewed it the last time because I forgot.
Well, and so there you go, non-compliant. It's all of those small data points that we engage with. And that's on your key person side, but that's also on your business side. That's on your occupational user side. That's on your Secretary of State side. It's about taking this data that we traditionally only look at when we need to copy and paste to another application and making it actionable. It's pulling all of that and engaging with our clients from a key person side to say, hey, your life is out of date. You haven't onboarded, your financial statements, your bank statements, or anything like that. So it's a sense of preparedness for that next decision that your company is going to make. But once again, now that you're licensed, now that you have this, how do we protect it? And so the first thing that we do with our clients is saying, what do you need to do every month? For every license you have, let's build that in for the entire year. Okay, what do you need to do every quarter? What do you need to do every year? And you really build out that accountability for an entire calendar year where our clients get to go, we know that our standard reporting schedule is built into OneComply. We know we have accountability. We know that if something isn't done, we're going to be notified that it wasn't done. That's where the operational side of it comes in. Unique things that we do, we have a really great partnership with a company called PrintScan. So you can actually digitize your prints with PrintScan and then order them directly in OneComply. So, hey, we need to do the submission. We can order that directly from PrintScan, but then also creating that compliance ticket. Once again, it's everything is so hectic when it comes down to licensing where someone goes, did you get your fingerprints? Have we ordered our fingerprints? Where do our fingerprints hit? To go into the system and saying, I know I ordered them for this person on this day and this is the status. Again, it's just about providing accountability and optics, not just for licensing, but ongoing impact of operations.
I think it's so important, people get behind the 8 ball on regulatory and compliance stuff, and just making sure that you're staying ahead of things makes your life so much easier as people are growing and scaling. So I appreciate the insights so much, and I thank you for your time, Cameron. It was a really great conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Jessica, and thank you to SBC.